Thank you. We have a great program tonight because my brave colleagues have agreed to share with you their very diverse backgrounds, both personal and political, in order to demonstrate cross-partisanship. Before we begin, I just want to emphasize how important cross-partisanship is to the American Promise mission. Although they wouldn't have used the words, the founders had cross-partisanship in mind when they drafted Article 5, the Amendment Clause, because they set the bar so high so that the Constitution wouldn't change on a political whim, that it couldn't be just coming from one party or one faction. And that is one of the reasons why our democracy, our constitutional democracy, is stable and has been for 250 years. But it requires cross-partisanship, and how do you do that in an age of polarization? It may be paradoxical, but amendment periods occur during extreme polarization. I see John Cowles here from the Brennan Center at NYU, who's written an excellent book called The People's Constitution that identified the historical indicators for when the Constitution is amended. One of those indicators is extreme polarization. Another is unpopular Supreme Court decisions. So I think we have found ourselves in an amendment era, and everyone in this room is working toward that. So I'm going to turn it over to Matt and Julia to talk about their backgrounds. And Julia is our Director of State Campaigns, coming from a small town in Maine. Matt is a political manager from the state of Texas, coming from the very urban area of Houston. And they're going to talk about their backgrounds, and then I have a few questions. So over to you guys.
So we're going to get a little personal. None of our political beliefs are developed in a vacuum, and it's not just cross-partisanly we work, but it's cross-culturally. So we thought it's kind of relevant to bring up how differently we grew up. So I'm from Ulna, Maine, 710 people. Here's the only building from my town. It's a small inland community outside of a small fishing community.
And I was born in Houston, Texas. I think it's the fourth largest city in the country, soon to be third, I hear. And I'm from Harris County, where 1/3 of the statewide vote comes from.
There may be some differences, but we were both children at one point. So we found some common ground already. I grew up in a family of 5, 2 siblings. I'm the middle child, if you can tell. My father was an engineer and my mother was an accountant.
And I am the youngest child, although I am from a family of 5, so we have that as well. My father was a mortgage agent. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. And sorry, I forget where I was going with that.
We also have pretty diverse interests outside of politics that can often inform our worldview. So I'm very into art, international museums and affairs. I'm also a theater teacher and performer. Yeah, go the arts.
And I was a Boy Scout. My dad there was my original political inspiration. He'd drive me to school every day, and we'd have some kind of conservative talk show playing in the background. And a fun fact about me is that is my long-lost brother, who I found through Ancestry DNA.
Oh, wow. That's another good difference, because I come from a Maine apolitical family, do not talk about politics, don't even vote. I'm like one of the only voters in my family too, so that can influence how I feel about things as well. We also were pretty political teenagers and adults, so I got my start as a feminist teen blogger. Don't know if those still exist or not. I also worked for Tish James in New York. I worked for Ban the Box, Marriage Equality Campaign, and then eventually I got into partisan politics. That's me with Obama. Yeah.
And I got my start exactly the opposite, supporting Congressman Ron Paul's campaign for president. I also served as an intern for Ted Cruz's first campaign, and as a field rep for Greg Abbott's first campaign, and as a political director for Congressman Mike Johnson, now Speaker Johnson's first campaign. So our backgrounds could not be more different.
Despite these differences, we work together every single day.
Yeah.
Okay, so you come from different places, but you both are working toward the same issue. So why don't you describe, beginning with you, Julia, how you came to the issue of reducing the influence of money in politics?
I would say I took a wayward path to this work. So in Maine, I used to run a caucus, and I ran PACs, and I helped donors funnel dark money into our elections. No joke, I really did do that. And hyper-partisanship can really brainwash your values. It can also not. And what I was taught is to win by any means necessary. And just to be clear, I did win twice, a majority for Senate Democrats. And I woke up every day feeling really sick. And I thought it was stress, and I went to the doctor until it kind of finally clicked for me that it was partisanship was literally making my body and my mind sick. I started to look into other groups and organizations, and so I kind of consider this job like a journey and a redemption arc to try to take every dollar out that I put in, try to build the world back a little bit better.
Yeah, and I would say I've seen the corruption of money in politics, the overwhelming influence that it has ever since 2012. Whether it was Ron Paul or other candidates, the grassroots routinely gets steamrolled by the special interests, PAC money, etc. So I've seen the ugly side of politics through that work. I'll give you an example. Just this last election cycle, I was working on an election for the mayor of Houston. And there was one campaign that cashed out $3 million in stocks from the campaign at the very end of the election. And you know, that's just one loophole that the 4-Hour Freedom Amendment could help us close. But we've seen it over and over again, I think on both sides. On the progressive side, you know, Julia's as progressive as you can be. I'm as conservative as you can be. We have the exact same reservations about the current system, and it's time to level the playing field.
Great, good answers. Thank you. So can you give us, each of you, an example of when you found it difficult to transcend your own political biases to work toward the goal of persuading people about the amendment? When you were challenged.
Yeah, every day it comes up. I don't have a specific example of what's hard, but one thing that we've noticed is even though we're both adults who know how to do active listening, there are some ways our brains have been coached to think about a turn of phrase or a word that is imbued with meaning for me is not imbued for him. And so anytime we meet or anytime we talk, we have to slow all the way down and be like, can you repeat that? And like, what does that mean to you? What does that mean for Texas? Mm-hmm. A word that might mean something in Maine means something totally different for him. So I find like every day that we speak, our own political training, it comes up, it props up, because even the news sources we read are different. And so we might, like, our political views on a news event might be different, but also like the way our brains have been taught to conceptualize around the issue also has to be challenged. So it's a self-disciplinary and a group disciplinary process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would also say that the issue of money in politics is not a political issue. So I find it not as difficult as I might have thought at first, or as many of you may think, to work with Julia on this, because we come at it from the same place. You know, frankly, we would like to be able to fight between each other on the battlefield of ideas without a third party controlling the outcome. So that's what we're here to do.
Great. So we see how disciplined and professional you are, and that's because you've both worked professionally in different parties. Has that helped or hindered your relationship, your training with each of the parties? Matt, you want to start?
Yeah, I mean, I think it helps because we're both curious about the other side. So every once in a while we have an opportunity to learn something from each other, whether it's just a word, whether it's a tactic, whether it's some recent news or just a development in a state house or a state senate. We just tend to speak about things very matter-of-factly. And another thing is we know where we're coming from. I know where she's coming from. She knows where I'm coming from. There are no surprises. And we just know that everything we do needs to be focused on getting this done. And so we just don't waste a lot of time on other things. And frankly, if we ever think we may have offended each other, we just go ahead and say, you know, sorry if I offended you, and we just move forward on this mission.
Do I have anything to apologize for today? We say that to each other quite a bit.
That's excellent.
It's part of it. I find the fact that we both have hardcore partisan backgrounds super helpful because it's a super specific thing to know what it's like to have a candidate call you at 1 a.m. because your campaign finance report is off by 3 cents, or you know, managing volunteers, independent campaigns. Look what happened on Twitter. We've both written hit pieces doing exactly what our last speaker was speaking about, fanning the fears of the flames of fear. And we actually both have a similar arc, which is like I've had enough of that. Like, I've done it personally. It's not something in the news. I know actually what it feels like to put the TV ad out and watch people get outraged and then have a result in the election. So it's not esoteric how the politics work. It's a very lived experience for both of us.
Yeah, and frankly, we equip each other with talking points for our target audience. You know, if I'm going to go speak to a group of Democrats, I'm probably going to talk to Julia first to talk about how I should go about that, and vice versa. So we strengthen ourselves and the organization.
Okay. And tomorrow, do you have any specific advice for people who are meeting with someone from the opposite party?
I would say make it personal. Find what you have in common with the congressman, with the senator, and try to focus on that. Let the conversation grow feet of its own, build that personal relationship, and then, you know, the rest will, I think, follow suit.
Yeah, especially if you're a constituent, that love of state is so binding. That's another piece that transcends our political differences. I think you said you're a 9th generation Texan. I've got 3 generations in Maine. I would do anything for my home state. I try to redefine what anything means every couple of years. But you have to work under the same assumption that whatever legislator or congressperson you're speaking with is loving that state the same way. You're loving it even if they come honestly to their values differently than you. Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Texas has not been around for 9 generations, but I am a 9th generation American, 1st generation Texan, and very proud of it. I always say I'm an American first, I'm a conservative second, I'm a Republican third, and you can throw Texan in between after America.
Oh, that's great. Okay, well, I'm curious as to, I guess I asked this before, but I'm trying to just elaborate more on times when you made a mistake. Have there been times where it was too difficult? And how would you go back and change that? As an example.
I think sometimes we got to talk about the political reality of a state that we're operating in. So there might be like an issue of the day in Texas around charter schools or pro-choice, pro-life or whatever, and we do have to speak about it. And there's so many ways you can speak with too much assumptive language, assuming someone agrees with you or assuming a value is universal. That's really not helpful. You just have to check. It's almost like I have to say, my side perceives it this way. I suspect your side perceives it this way. Can you give me more context? Because the perception is your reality. So if we're battling each other, this is reality, this is reality. It never has gotten us anywhere. And I'll speak personally. I was at CPAC this year, which it rocked, and it was really hard. And I walked into it with all sorts of assumptions about what kind of people and what they were going to say to me. And even some of our own talking points, we were talking about Soros and Zuckerbucks. Some of them, my liberal training had just been like, these are automatically not true. Not the AP points, but like some of the news pieces about Zuckerberg or about Soros. And I literally convinced myself that I was like, something I automatically, because it was coming from the right, thought was wrong, actually speaking with real conservatives about it completely changed my opinion. And I would have thought my opinion could never be changed. So it's like you can't get hardcore about it until you've actually done 100 conversations and put in your 10,000 hours talking to people who are different from you. Until you've put in that time talking and working, like, you don't know. No one knows, you know. Yes. I think.
I just wanted to go back to a previous question about tomorrow. One thing that resonates with both sides is, I'll just say it, self-preservation. Every single member of Congress can gain additional votes by supporting the 4-Hour Freedom Amendment. They will gain additional votes in the general election, no doubt about it.
Great advice. Well, thank you. I think this is a great demonstration of cross-partisanship. It isn't necessarily sacrificing your beliefs or your values, but it's transcending them in order to achieve a goal. And Jeff likes to use the analogy of, or the example of the rivers overflowing. We all run down to the riverside and fill the sandbags, and we don't ask which neighborhood we're protecting. We're all there to stop the flood for our maybe different reasons in our different neighborhoods, but we've come together and transcended our differences.
Yeah, and it's been hard to put our finger on it, but I think the common thread is almost like a sense of populism, that we the people should be in charge of our government. I said it's not a political issue, it's a fundamental one. It's a fundamental question of what kind of government we want to have, of the people, by the people, for the people, or of the people, by the people, of the corporations, by the corporations, for the corporations, and it's unacceptable.
We spoke a lot to prepare for this, and I think we both felt the pressure of like, there's a really clean answer about how people can work together, and there's not one clear answer. There's not necessarily a secret sauce. It is personal. It's interpersonal. And I'd be remiss to say if we just didn't get lucky that we're two people from two different parties from two different states who also just happen to really enjoy working together. And I challenge you to go out and find that person for you, because they definitely exist. You just haven't met them yet.
Yeah. And a good sense of humor, I think, helps.
A good sense of humor definitely helps. In fact, it provides comedic relief a lot of the time.
So I think that's it, unless you have anything more to add. That was a great panel. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank y'all.
Appreciate it.